Donald Trump is walking back recent comments about cutting Social Security. He's searching for an elusive abortion message that will offend neither anti-abortion voters nor suburban moderates. He's inviting negative news cycles with claims that Jewish Democrats hate their religion and warnings of a coming auto industry bloodbath. And to top it off, he's low on campaign cash and doesn't have the personal fortune to post a bond in the civil fraud judgment against him in New York. The former president may be up in the polls, seemingly in the driver's seat against a deeply unpopular incumbent. But problems, including many of his own making, are piling up around him. And his first 2 weeks as his party's presumptive nominee have revealed old tendencies and new vulnerabilities that, taken in totality, amount to a rocky start to his general election campaign against Joe Biden. Even inside the campaign, advisors are acknowledging the uneven transition to the general election. On a call with staff on Friday, a senior Trump campaign advisor lamented some of the recent news coverage, saying it had been a bad press week for the campaign, according to two people with knowledge of the call and granted anonymity to describe a private conversation. The advisor was particularly concerned about an onslaught of news stories highlighting the Trump campaign's abrupt decision to close Republican National Committee minority outreach centers and an early voting initiative as part of the campaign and National Party's recent merger. By the time of the call with staff and after the Trump campaign faced criticism over the strategy, the RNC's newly elected chair had announced to members that the programs would not end, after all. But the damage was done. Collectively, the missteps and unresolved policy problems have served as a reminder to some Republicans that the election is no guarantee, and that one of the main hurdles may simply be maintaining some discipline at the top of the ticket. The only person who can beat Donald Trump is Donald Trump, said David Urban, a former senior Trump campaign advisor. I don't think we're there yet. Despite it all, Trump remains in an enviable position, leading Biden in early polls as the incumbent president clocks in with historically bad approval ratings. But Trump's advantage is also less than 2 percentage points, hardly a commanding lead, and he is still sitting below 50%. In the earliest days of the general election campaign, Trump's often improvised remarks contrast with his opponent's more carefully scripted campaign outings, and that approach brings some downsides, as evidenced in recent days. After making marginal gains with Latino voters, Trump on Saturday said some migrants were not people. His campaign scrambled over the weekend to push back on coverage of his remarks predicting a bloodbath if he loses in November, explaining that he was only talking about the auto industry. And then Trump ignited another controversy, saying Jews who vote for Democrats hate everything about Israel and their religion. Trump's smashmouth politics also have upsides for him, resonating with his base. He is who he is, his narrative is doubling down on negativism, said Chuck Coughlin, a political strategist in Arizona who left the Republican Party after Trump was elected. Inside the campaign, however, the bigger scramble has been around two policy fronts where Republicans have been vulnerable. Trump moved quickly into cleanup mode after seemingly entertaining cuts to Social Security, the popular entitlement program. In an interview with Breitbart News published last week, Trump said he would never do anything that will jeopardize or hurt Social Security or Medicare. That came after Trump told CNBC there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements. And he is bracing for another round of controversy on abortion, a major point of electoral weakness for the GOP since the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022. On Sunday, Trump told Fox News he would make a decision on what policy to back pretty soon, saying he would like to see if we could make both sides happy. It was an all but impossible aspiration, but one that underscored Trump's long-held belief that the issue remains toxic for the GOP. In an interview with WABC Radio's Sid Rosenberg on Tuesday, Trump floated, as he has before, possible support for a 15-week limit on abortion, saying he is thinking in terms of that. However, he also said all the legal scholars on both sides agree it's a state issue, not a federal one. Trump's appeals to the Republican base were successful at turning out enough voters to win the presidency in 2016. But it wasn't enough 4 years later, when he alienated many moderates and independent voters. While his campaign has made inroads with Black and Hispanic voters this cycle, he appears to be doing little to expand his reach to the moderate middle in the initial stages of the general election campaign. Trump has done nothing to mend fences with primary rivals like Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. And his former vice president, Mike Pence, refuses to endorse him. I think he feels very confident and pretty much can say and do whatever he wants to, Wayne McDonald, a New Hampshire lawmaker and former state Republican Party chair, said of Trump. But I'd suggest that he be careful. Trump, said McDonald, who supported former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie in the primary, doesn't seem to be too concerned about moderate swing voters who could tilt the election in November. At a minimum, Trump has given Democrats an opening to tear into him. On Monday, Biden's campaign released a video on social media spotlighting Trump's bloodbath remarks. That evening, after Trump made his comments about Jewish people, Biden's campaign accused Trump of attacking Jewish Americans at a time of rising anti-Semitism. Parrying attacks from Democrats is something any Republican would have to do. But Trump is about to face an avalanche of spending from Biden and his well-financed allies. Biden's campaign said this week that it has a staggering $155 million on hand between the campaign, the Democratic National Committee and related joint fundraising committees, and as of the end of January, Biden and the DNC held a $41 million cash advantage over Trump. Trump has far less cash on hand, due in part to his legal bills. The Republican National Committee is in similar financial straits. And on top of that, the former president is facing money problems outside of the campaign. He told an appellate court in New York on Monday that he can't find a bond to cover the full amount of a civil fraud judgment of more than $450 million there.